A matter of time. An annoying time traveler pays a visit to the Enterprise.
The Enterprise is going to help out a planet dealing with dust clouds from an asteroid impact.
And the dust caused from it is going to cause climate change across the entire planet.
On the way, Worf picks up a space-time distortion, whatever that means, and Picard says it's too close to be a coincidence. I didn't know what he meant by that.
And they turn around to go check it out.
They find a small ship whose inhabitant beams aboard.
It turns out to be Max Headroom, and he's as annoying as ever.
He says his name is Rasmussen, and he claims to be a historian from Earth 300 years in the future.
He's played by Matt Frewer, most well known for Max Headroom, which pretty much solidified him as a go-to actor for science fiction stuff, but he's been doing live action and voiceover work for a long time, even very recently.
He says he has come back to study Picard, and Picard says he doesn't understand why he was chosen, apparently having forgotten everything that's happened over the course of the show already. And despite Picard's supposed interest in history, he doesn't seem to understand why he would be excited to observe things on the Enterprise.
I thought it was ridiculous that Picard immediately completely accepts his story of who he is and why he's there.
They have a meeting with all the officers and discuss how Max can't answer certain questions about the future for fear of altering the timeline, ignoring the fact that his presence would be doing that already.
And he asks them all to complete questionnaires. Riker suggests he might be an imposter as a joke, but Picard says,
"But I've examined his credentials and everything seems to be in order, so I think we should extend to him every courtesy."
They try to figure out why he picked that day to show up, and Deanna says he's hiding something, but she doesn't know what.
Later, Data attempts to ask some future questions, but he's rebuffed.
Shit, I assumed you would. It'd be best if you kept your assumptions to yourself, wouldn't it?
The Enterprise arrives at the planet.
They offer to release greenhouse gases from underground to trap the sun's warmth by using their phasers.
Max sits with Beverly, Riker, and Worf in 10 Forward.
And he hints that some big historical event will happen the next day.
Riker asks why other future historians have never been reported, and Max says it's because they are very careful. That should have raised some red flags if there were any left to raise.
In engineering, Max bothers Geordi about his visor, and then when no one is looking, he pockets a tablet. Which I know someone's going to point out it's called a pad. I know it's called a pad.
I called it a space Game Boy. The Enterprise begins releasing the greenhouse gases, and as usual, they seem to expect changes to occur immediately.
Troy says Max is trying to confuse and misdirect them, and he's starting to annoy everybody except Beverly, and then he starts to aggressively hit on her.
And she agrees to give him a neural stimulator that he asks for, which is not what it sounds like.
Okay, it took me a second to think about what the hell you were talking about. Suddenly, there are huge earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on the planet,
which is of course caused by their phaser drilling, and the dust from the volcanoes is only going to make things worse.
Max goes to talk to Data, who was listening to a lot of music at the same time.
And we see his freaking Mondrian painting again, just when I thought this episode couldn't get any worse.
He asks for Android schematics, and while Data isn't looking, he pockets a tricorder. How much space does he have in those pockets?
I thought it was ridiculous that they let him just wander around on the ship and do whatever the hell he wants, although I guess it is consistent with previous episodes. Believing what he says is one thing, but not even monitoring him is something else.
Alright, I have Data and Geordi's plan.
What did you say about,
Well, my note says Data and Geordi have a plan to, and then I just have a big underscore.
Data tells Picard, I guess, that they want to use the phasers to turn some of the atmosphere into plasma, which is apparently a good thing, although there's a chance that they will completely burn off the planet's atmosphere. Nothing in the conversation made any sense, and I thought it was one of the more ridiculous non-science conversations that we've had so far.
I agree. Due to the level of risk, Picard requests assistance from Max, but he refuses as it would completely change history, he says.
They have a whole philosophical discussion about the ramifications of his actions and what it would mean for Max to tell him about what will happen.
And at one point, Picard brings up his ace in the hole, which is violating the Prime Directive, which I thought was pretty funny.
His argument is that since he violates the Prime Directive every other Tuesday, it should be okay for Max to violate his own rules.
And even after Picard's very impassioned speech, Max still refuses.
Riker radios Picard to tell him that the conditions on the planet are as good as they will ever get for trying out the phaser plan. Picard heads to the bridge and struggles with making the right decision.
But he ultimately decides to do it.
Max says that Picard made his choice on his own, but Picard says Max actually helped him by reminding him,
Your arguments have reminded me how precious the right to choose is.
and I was afraid I would have to see a doctor because I was rolling my eyes so hard.
Geordi says he wants to remain on the surface while they try, because it's more dramatic that way.
He says he can help compensate for the density vibrations, whatever that means. What the hell are they even doing on those computers? The Enterprise is doing everything.
And once they fire their phasers, it of course spreads over the entire planet in about 5 seconds. And even though it works and the people are safe, would an atmospheric changes that rapid cause all kinds of radical changes to pretty much everything on that planet?
And I like how when Picard tries to contact Geordi right after they do their plan, Geordi waits a few seconds before responding just to build up some more tension.
I was sweating, man. Max says it's time for him to go and heads for the shuttle bay, only to find all the officers waiting for him.
Picard says they will need to look in his ship to find the stuff that has gone missing over the last couple days.
Max says he'll only allow Data inside because he won't reveal what he sees.
Because we all know that Data has never malfunctioned in the past.
And then, gasp, Max reveals that he's actually from the past.
And he stole the time ship from someone from the future. And he even stole the guy's clothes, which I guess was to make it look like he was from the future, but if he is a time traveler, he could have been wearing clothes from any time. I feel like that would be easy to explain.
And he wants to steal all the crew's stuff to get rich. I like how he took Worf's knife. What is he going to say? This is a knife.
His plan when he gets back is to pretend to have invented all the devices that he takes with him, which seems like an overly difficult way to benefit from time travel. There are so many easier things he could do. Just steal something that's valuable by itself instead of having to try to figure out how it works. You know, like gold.
They use latinum in the future. He says his ultimate prize is Data, and he tries to stun him with a phaser.
But it doesn't work. Data makes him go out and explain things to Picard. Picard helpfully explains that when the ship was opened, the computer was able to access and deactivate all the stolen items, including the phaser. It's a good thing the computer didn't lump Data in with everything else. Max has a little moment with Beverly, as if that was an actual subplot, but it wasn't, so it doesn't matter.
She was impressed with his acting, though, and we know how she values that over medicine. And because the ship is set to automatically go back to its own time, and Max isn't on it, it leaves without him.
And even though Data knew the ship was going to be leaving because Max told him, he doesn't recommend that they get out of the way just in case. They don't know how that works. That seems dangerous.
I was kind of hoping when Worf went to get the tray of all of their stuff, it left with him.
That could have been a good spin-off show.
Worf, 2730.
Somebody's going to point out the correct time.
A matter of time. Overall,
I really liked the basic idea of a guy claiming to be from the future who turns out to be from the past. But that revelation only comes at the very end, and this guy was annoying as hell throughout the entire episode. Having the other characters also be annoyed by him didn't somehow make it tolerable, and it wasn't even used for comedy purposes as much as I would have expected, although I did like his interactions with Troy and how she just does not care about what he has to say. I guess maybe I should count myself lucky that there weren't that many dumb jokes. His conversation with Picard was not bad, and I thought Picard's struggle mostly worked pretty well, but all that amounted to just a few minutes of the entire episode. The B-plot with them helping the planet was a bunch of complete nonsense, and the actual time travel aspects seem to be just kind of glossed over as if they didn't actually want to get involved with that too much, even though that's what the episode is about. I gave it a D+.
I gave it a D. I thought it was humorous that the crew treated the volcanic cataclysm as another natural one, when in reality it was caused by their own crappy planning. The dude on the planet even said, "I'm getting into the habit of thanking you," which was weird, because they caused a bunch of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on their own. They almost killed everybody faster. All of the discussions between the characters was under the assumption that Max's story was legitimate. Picard's vetting was idiotic. Max expressing delight at all of the inconsequential things and getting in people's faces was funny the first time, but not the second time, not the third time, and not the 900th time. Matt Frewer's acting is really hit and miss for me, and unfortunately this time was a solid miss. I did not like this episode.
Neither did I.
This is really terrific. We're having a nice time now, aren't we? I think the whole thing is going incredibly well.